It was 7:02 in the morning when Jean Morel placed his leather briefcase on the heavy oak desk in his office. Like every other day for the past 2 decades, he opened the daily reports with mechanical precision. He reviewed figures, performance margins, production outputs, all of it flawless. Too flawless. Everything seemed in order, maybe too much in order. There was something unnervingly sterile about the perfection. And yet, that morning, it wasn't the numbers that unsettled him. It was a seemingly offhand comment made by someone from Human Resources during a routine discussion. "Yeah, we have this guy," the man had said casually. "He often stays after hours. No one really knows why. He keeps to himself, works quietly, always alone." Jean had looked up, his interest piqued. "After his shift?" he repeated, frowning. "He's working overtime without logging it." "Yeah." The HR manager shrugged. "Doesn't seem to be doing it for money, refuses bonuses too. He just stays. Says he wants to help, but honestly, it's vague." A chill, almost imperceptible, crept down Jean's spine. For 20 years, he had run this factory. He knew every screw, every machine, every worker. Nothing escaped his attention. But this had slipped past him, and he hated that. It wasn't just about pride. It was something deeper, a gnawing feeling that something was off, that, behind the perfect rhythms of his factory, something was quietly unraveling. He asked for a name. No one could give it, just vague mentions. Apparently, the night shift didn't get much attention, so Jean made a decision, unorthodox and bold. 3 days later, under a false identity, Jean Morel became a night shift temp. He wore a reflective vest, a helmet secured tightly on his head, and a contractor's badge around his neck. He shaved his beard, darkened his graying hair, and adopted a slight regional accent. A burly man bit into an energy bar and asked, "What agency are you from?" "Docune," Jean lied smoothly. "Last-minute call. I'm just covering for someone." And so, his infiltration began. That first night, everything looked normal. Tired workers, the usual banter, the hum of machines spinning through the silence, until 3:17 a.m. By then, most had left. That's when Jean noticed him. A young man crouched before a machine, not cleaning it, not fooling around. No, he was working intently on the interface, navigating menus, examining settings with the focus of a specialist. Jean moved closer, pretending to search for a tool. The young man didn't even glance at him. He was lost in thought, totally absorbed. His uniform had a small name tag, Leo M. Jean observed him carefully, young, quiet, without arrogance. But there was something else, an unsettling precision to his movements. He wasn't guessing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he kept doing it every night. Leo was always the last to leave, always quiet, always working, never speaking much to anyone. Everything he did seemed deliberate, calculated even. But how had no one noticed this before? Jean realized he had stepped into a mystery much deeper than he expected. The factory at night had its own mood, a scent of hot metal, industrial oil, and a silence so dense it hummed in the ears. For Jean, every hour spent in this strange atmosphere pulled him closer to something he couldn't name. On the third night, things changed. As the last operator scanned out and the building emptied, Jean watched from behind a column. Leo approached one of the control panels and carefully removed a metal plate. His movements were precise, like a seasoned technician. But he wasn't trained for this. Jean was certain. He wasn't repairing breakdowns. He was improving things, reinforcing weak spots, preventing future issues. And as he worked, he scribbled in a worn black notebook with frayed corners. Jean caught a glimpse. Schematics, dates, warnings. Motor 5 may overheat. Bearing must be replaced within 2 weeks. Line B switch, loose connection, risk for operator. Leo was documenting what others chose to ignore. But why was he doing it alone? Why hide? Why the silence? One night, Jean approached him. Trying to sound casual, he said, "You've got golden hands. You should be teaching the engineers." Leo gave a faint smile, eyes still on his work. "I just do what I can." He avoided supervisors, refused praise, and every time a manager walked near, he slipped into the shadows like a ghost. Jean began to wonder, was this dedication or guilt? Was he running from something? The following night, John decided to break the silence. He waited until everyone had left. As Leo packed up his tools, Jean stepped forward like just another tired coworker. "You always stay this late?" he asked. "Doing this for overtime?" Leo barely looked up. "It's not about the money." Jean hesitated, then said softly, "You know, some people think you should speak up about what you do. Get recognized." Leo let out a dry chuckle. "No thanks. No one notices the screws holding the machine together, and when they break, they just get replaced." Silence. Jean sat on a nearby crate. Leo looked like he was about to leave, but then he stopped. Maybe that night he needed to talk. Maybe it was the disguise that made Jean safe to speak to. Just another face in the dark. "My brother worked here," Leo said suddenly, voice low. 4 years ago." Jean looked up, listening. A part failed, something we all knew was faulty, but nobody fixed it. Nobody listened. They found him crushed, dead on the line. Jean felt his heart clench. Leo stared at the floor. "Since then, I've been doing what I wish someone had done for him. I watch, I fix things, I take care of people, even if they don't know it." A heavy silence settled over the room. Jean had heard thousands of stories in his career, but not like this one. This wasn't in the reports. It wasn't in Excel sheets or financial graphs. It was raw. It was human. It hurt. And it broke something inside him. This quiet boy, unnoticed, uncelebrated, was holding up an entire corner of the factory, out of loyalty, out of love, out of grief. Jean stood slowly, throat tight. He knew that after tonight, nothing would be the same. Leo took a long breath, as though he had just unburdened a weight far too heavy to carry alone. He had never told anyone this story. He didn't need to speak. His hands had been speaking for years. His silence had been screaming. And yet, that night, to a stranger in a borrowed uniform, he finally let it out. Maybe the past had finally weighed too heavily on his shoulders, or maybe he felt, just for once, that someone truly listened. Jean remained still. Every word from Leo echoed in his mind, like a voice in a long, hollow corridor. "That was my big brother, Arthur. He was 26. He reported the faulty alarm multiple times. No one listened." Jean Morel had always run the factory by the numbers, charts, reports, profits. He thought that was leadership. But everything changed the day he met Leo, a quiet night worker who stayed late without recognition, fixing machines no one dared to report broken. One accident, one silence, had cost a life, and while others called it fate, Leo saw the truth. Someone had to care enough to notice. Leo shared no fancy title, no shining badge, but he had something rarer: devotion. "I repair, I check, I note," he said, "because if I don't do it, who will?" His quiet courage struck something in Jean. For the first time in years, Jean listened. He watched. He sat with workers. He heard the pain, the laughter, the exhaustion. He was no longer a man in a suit, but someone relearning what his factory truly was: people, sweat, care. One morning, Jean gathered everyone. No stage lights, no scripted speech, just him and a black notebook. "I discovered someone who made this factory safer without being asked, without being seen," he said. "He reminded me that this place doesn't run on machines, but on souls like his." Then he turned to Leo in the crowd. "You are now head of safety. You've given us more than notes. You've given us a wake-up call." The room erupted in applause. Leo, overwhelmed, whispered, "I only did what felt right." Jean smiled. "That's exactly why you're here." The factory transformed. Workers shared ideas. Listening circles were formed. A plaque was mounted in honor of those who protect others in silence. And each year, it would go to an invisible hero. One evening, Jean waited for Leo at the exit and handed him an envelope. "What's this?" Leo asked. "A possibility," Jean replied. It was a full scholarship for an engineering degree, funded by the company. "Why me?" Leo asked quietly. "Because sometimes," Jean said, "we must see beyond the machines and reach out to those who keep them running in the shadows." Leo opened the envelope and understood. It wasn't just a thank you, it was a future.